As previously unreported messages obtained newly by the Washington Post showed J.D. Vance's doubts about Donald Trump's legacy extended even as his first term was nearly at an end. In February of 2020, quote, in the direct messages sent during Trump's final year in office to an acquaintance over the social media platform then known as Twitter, Vance harshly criticized his future running mate's record of governance and said Trump had not fulfilled his economic agenda. Quote, Trump has just so thoroughly failed to deliver on his economic populism, accepting a disjointed China policy, Vance wrote in February 2020. He also offered a prediction. Joe Biden, he believed, is going to win the 2020 election. Quote, I think Trump will probably lose, he wrote in a message in June 2020, a few months before ballots were cast in an election that Vance would later claim falsely and repeatedly was stolen by the Democrats. In a response to NBC News, a J.D. Vance spokesperson said this, quote, the Trump economy was one of the strongest and most successful periods of American history, where working families saw increasing take-home pay and low prices of basic necessities like groceries and gasoline. There is no comparison between President Trump's record of unprecedented success and Kamala Harris's record of abject failure, rising prices, blah, blah, blah. Of course, no mention there of Vance's evaluation, only shared privately, that Trump, quote, so thoroughly failed, end quote, to deliver on his economic plan. But betters be damned, he's on the ticket anyway. Of course, he's there because Mike Pence isn't, because Trump sent his supporters to, quote, hang Mike Pence for refusing to disrupt America's tradition of a peaceful transfer of power. J.D. Vance, the man who can't quite figure out when he actually started to like Donald Trump, is there instead. It's where we start the hour with some of our most favorite experts and friends. Professor of History at New York University, Ruth Ben-Ghiat, is back with us at the table. Former Deputy National Security Advisor under President Obama, Ben Rhodes, is here. And Democratic strategist and professor at Columbia University, MSNBC political analyst Basil Smykel is here. Ruth, there's something that Tim Snyder has helped me understand, and that's that we've covered lies in politics as a crime for which politicians get caught and they get Pinocchios, and the campaigns that got caught would smart from that. They would recoil and try to correct them because it used to be damaging. What Trump ushered in is a chest-out approach to lies and liars, and this wink and a nod to their own base that they know, that we know, that they know they're lying, but nobody cares because that's the grip. J.D. Vance seems to take that to a new level with his hatred articulated by J.D. Vance for Donald Trump up through the 2016 campaign and through the first term to now plop down right on the ticket.
Yeah, absolutely. And Vance has a lot of qualities of authoritarian politicians. First is that they are entirely transactional. They will say whatever they need to say to be where the winds of power are blowing. And by the way, you know, he and Trump are quite a pair, because many politicians who are not quite so transactional might not have chosen someone as their running mate after they said all those horrible things. But Trump doesn't really care because Vance had, you know, money and backing from Peter Thiel and other important things that Trump judged more interesting to him. But, you know, Vance, he's part of this campaign to destroy the meaning of truth. And I actually think he's learned a lot from Donald Trump. And that's why he's been saying very recently, well, even if Haitian immigrants are actually there legally, here legally, I'm just going to keep saying they're illegal because, you know, truth doesn't matter. What matters is being believed by the constituents, by the base. So, you know, a way to sum this up is that in 2016, Vance said that Trump was cultural heroin. Now, 2024, Vance himself is a dealer of that same heroin, the toxic mix of lying on any subject of racism, misogyny, inciting violence against immigrants. That's now his brand.
What do you do about it, Ruth? What is the antidote to a proud and boastful hypocrite?
I think an appeal to decency. I think it's, in the vice presidential debate, somebody like Tim Walz, who stands for truth, who stands for principles, can really go with that, because I think that even though there is the wink, wink, and people think in fact, there were studies that came out after 2016 that some people actually liked the idea that Trump was lying because he was pushing the truth. He was like sticking it to the establishment. But after a while, that can grow old. So I think pointing out, even though it's exhausting, continuing to point out the lies and the bad faith toward Americans of knowing, like the Haitian immigrant comment, knowing you're lying and saying, I'm just going to keep lying and I'm going to boast about lying. That isn't going to fly with everybody. And we need to really advertise that bad faith toward Americans.
Yeah, I mean, Basil, it seems like J.D. Vance goes to 10 and then decides that our ears don't hurt enough, and so he turns it up to 12. And it feels like Trumpism operates in this understanding that it's not as loud as you think it is, but that's as long as you keep it at 10. And I wonder if Harris wins, and if she wins resoundingly, if it'll be this Vance pick that turned Trumpism, to 12, that just was a bridge too far. I feel like Trump's lies were, in Trump's view, Trump's truth at the moment. Vance takes it to CNN and says, oh, no, I created that to make you cover it. I wonder if Vance is almost too transparent in terms of what they're doing, which is to intentionally lie, to stoke racism, to stoke divides, to steal an election.
It's interesting because Ruth's point about learning really struck me, because you could see Vance go through the motions of saying, Donald Trump has taken it to one place and I'm going to take it to the next level. It's almost like Trump and the Republicans have put out this trial balloon to say, we're going to put out this guy who's going to be more extreme than I am. Because on the one hand, if we lose, then we know kind of what our boundary is. If we win, we know how far we can take it. And, the concern that I've always had, even if, and I do sincerely hope that Kamala Harris wins, but the concern I've always had is that Trump energy doesn't go away. It's high school chemistry. Energy is never created nor destroyed. So where does that energy all go? And the J.D. Vances of the world are going to be out there, assuming that he's sincere about what he's saying today. I don't even know if that's even possible, but let's just say that he is. And he goes out and tries to lead something after this election, because they're going to be people that are going to want to do that. And they're going to find all of these folks who are out there who didn't, where if Donald Trump doesn't win, they're going to be upset, concerned, and they're going to try to figure out where to go next. And, just owing to another point that Ruth made, I don't have a pop culture reference for this. I keep thinking about A Clockwork Orange. That scene when the main character has got his eyes propped open and is being forced to watch something until he learns a certain kind of behavior. And that's what I feel that the Trump folks are trying to do to us right now. We're going to force you to watch this until you learn and act in the ways that we want you to think and behave. And for whoever he can capture in that moment, he's going to send out and do his bidding. And the rest of us, are either going to have to appeal to folks' decency or to their self-interest in the moment, that this is not the narrative of America that we need.
For me, J.D. Vance is part of the story that's gutted me for 10 years. He was another off-ramp. He is a man who believes women should stay in violent marriages. Why didn't, Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski endorse Kamala Harris when J.D. Vance was picked? He is a man who described Trump as America's Hitler. Why wasn't he the bridge too far? He illustrates how successfully Trump is boiling frog.
He does, and he illustrates. I'll take another analogy from high school science. The Republican Party under Trump has become like this black hole that just sucks people in, right? They've identified their voters. And if you want to stretch history back, it's all the way back to like the Pat Buchanan populism culture war of the 90s that was kind of underneath the surface of the Republican Party. And, Trump reflected the kind of final takeover of this political party by this kind of populist authoritarian force. And it is so powerful right now in terms of its gravitational pull on Republican politicians that you either just jump in, all the way, like J.D. Vance has done, or, if you're somebody like a Mitch McConnell or even a Lisa Murkowski, you just kind of feel like that's too strong a force for me to do anything to resist it. And we're going to have a test case here. If Kamala Harris wins, does that continue to be the force that is driving the Republican Party? I mean, I thought it was interesting. Another guy who tried this out was Ron DeSantis, right? And it just didn't sell. He doesn't have Trump's charisma. He's not funny at all. He's kind of just not a likable person, And
he eats pudding with his finger.
Yeah, I found that kind of hopeful, that he kind of took this anti-woke message on the road and nobody really responded to it. But I think a J.D. Vance and a Josh Hawley and a Tom Cotton, like this is a new brand of Republican politician. And I think Trump picking Vance really was saying, these are the people that I see as the future of this party. If I win, they're my heirs. And, I think if he loses, they have the inside lane, frankly, for the next era of the Republican Party.
Which is what, though? Which is Trump as America's Hitler or Vance as Trump's number 2?
I don't think, right now it's, Trump is America's dictator, right? I mean, that's what the project is. That's the only thing it's been about. It's not like Donald Trump cares that much about, the health of the Republican Party, the local and state level. I mean, he's, backed candidates that were bad for the health of the Republican Party at the local and state level. So I think absent Trump, it's just a bunch of anger and populism and lies without, that centrifugal force that Trump is.
But it's like the flip-flop on lies, right? It isn't even the lies. The thing about Trump is there's the continuity of racism. There's the history of the discrimination suits against the Justice Department, of the central part of the exonerated 5, of rapists and murderers, of birtherism. For J.D. Vance, he said worse things about Donald Trump than any of the 4 of us ever had on this program. What is that?
I mean, that's somebody whose own ambition was obviously the most powerful force in his life. That's the most obvious thing in the world. And I think to the point that Ruth made about calling it out, I think the second part of that message has to be, he doesn't care about you. Right. He only cares about himself. And this has to be, I think, the closing message. And Kamala Harris has done this quite well. In the debate, she did this, essentially, yes, it's about the lies. Yes, it's about the hate and the division and the racism. And it's also about the fact that J.D. Vance only cares about himself. And he tells you he cares about you, he doesn't. Because someone who's willing to kind of totally reinvent themselves, totally change their beliefs just to get ahead is not someone who's going to look out for you.
I think it's hard to have conversations about broken people in our politics, right? Because broken people hurt. Jamie Lee Curtis said that in her acceptance speech at the Emmys for The Bear. Hurt people hurt. And Tim Ryan came the closest to saying it in his run against him. I said, why do you think he's like this? And he said, there has to be something in the trauma that makes him crave control. But J.D. Vance is more than a profile and sort of policies that hurt people and control. He is, if he were outside of politics, you would look at him as someone so completely broken that in his private messages, he disparaged Donald Trump in more vicious terms than any elected Democrat I can think of right here, anyone that I've ever had on this show. He called him cultural heroin. He called him America's Hitler. I've never had a guest in 9 years call Donald Trump America's Hitler.
What?
How do you take the stage on Tuesday and make the case for America's Hitler?
No, it's absolutely right. I mean, but you're right in using the term broken. Donald Trump's point when he interacts with you is to break you. It's not to elevate you. It's not to put a steel post in your back and make you stand up straight, chest out, back, chest broad and out.